and welcome back to the vlog. And we have yet another special interview for you guys this week. You guys are getting a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of fun things going on in the IFB world. And so I keep telling you guys to keep it locked here. And so you guys can get the exclusives. And so today we have yet another man of the people, and he is all over the internet right now. This is Jaden McCormick of Connecticut. And we're going to be interviewing him today, talking to him about the firestorm that he has unleashed for doing nothing other than just speaking the Bible. Okay. And so, friends, without further ado, let us introduce Brother Jaden.
Hi. So this is gonna be an interesting conversation because I've been the most canceled man in Connecticut history, and of course modern history as well. But I'm very interested in talking about biblical topics because that's who I am. You can even see the flag in the background. And hey, I'm here for the fight. I'm here for the thunder, and let's have that conversation roll today.
All right. Well, I love it. And that's what the viewers want to have. They want to have some thunder. Okay. There's too much soft soap in the world.
Yes.
We want some men of God to stand in the gap. So, Jaden, let the people know a little bit about yourself. We know you're from Connecticut. We know you're running for office, but introduce yourself a little bit.
Right. My name's Jaden McCormick. I basically been, a fundamental Baptist all my life. I got saved at age 12, got baptized at age 14, even though I wish it was right after my salvation, but it is what it is. And, I basically grew up in such a great home. My grandfather was head deacon under Jack Hiles. And basically, I had a great family heritage. A lot of my cousins, aunts, and uncles have always been in the ministry, my father being a pastor. And, I grew up in this environment understanding, how to read the Bible, but exclusively knowing how to live the Bible. And so, that has always been my core belief is that you have to live what God tells you to do in God's will and also through what he has told us from the King James version. And of course, I decided I wanted to get into real estate to begin with. But I didn't even get into politics yet. And so I got into the real estate industry, started at age 16 years old and shadowed the number one Remax realty agent in all of, it actually was in Alabama. So, but I'm from Connecticut. And so I shadowed, a guy named Ricky Caruth. I understood his whole business model, really just understood how to really do real estate. And so at age 16, I was equipped with, an understanding of how finances work. Then I started, kind of keep on going with my life, got my Eagle Scout rank. I was very much heavy in the community in my local area. And then I started working with a business that did sober living, and they started having, investors from all over go into these sober houses. I help manage that, and I claim as that being me managing a multi-million dollar budget because that's what it truly was. And so, and that was at just, a young age, and I'm only 23 years old right now. And so at that point, I of course worked other state jobs too. I was very entrepreneurial. I could get into that later, but it's not important. But it happened this year. This year of 2026, I decided to take a job working at the state capitol of Connecticut in the Energy and Technology Committee. And so I really much just delve right deep into understanding legislation, how laws are passed. I really just got the big scope of how you do politics. And I got to meet several people, networked. I'm a very big talker and networker, being in real estate already and knowing how to respond to people and getting, business done. And so it came natural to me how to talk with these individuals and just being bold and knowing how to get, contacts and all that. And so I became one of the most established Republicans in the entire state of Connecticut within like 2 months. Within 2
Wow.
months. And so it was crazy because at that point, I was having all these conversations, getting to the degree of, maybe even doing a whole new chapter of, the Connecticut Young Republicans in Windham County. I was about to be like the big shot Republican, within my area. And so I decided, after praying about it, seeking God's will and judgment, and seeing how the whole entire landscape was shaping in District 50, to run for state representative. And, there's a whole story background of why I decided to do that, because of all the corruption, the people, how progressive the state is becoming. But just to get straightforward to it, I basically was running the number one campaign in all of Eastern Connecticut. I had all the, backing. I had everybody supporting me. I had just a tremendous amount of support from virtually everybody. And, I was number one, number one. It's crazy to even say that, because it just started this year. And then June 2nd happened. Oh, it almost sounds like a January 6th moment or something like that. But, June 2nd was infamous because, June 2nd was when I made a very simplistic conservative post about protecting children and saying,
Mhm,
hey, the LGBT, they're after our kids. They're having drag queen story hours in the state of Connecticut. They're hiring them for $700. I want to protect them in the school system, make sure that, the children aren't being castrated, and just have a very baseline, down to earth policy when I get elected, that I will be there to fight against, all the LGBT that are attacking kids. And so, any other Republican throughout the United States would probably agree with me on that statement, but not the Connecticut Republicans. The Connecticut Republicans are very progressive people by heart. You have to kind of think of them as like a moderate Democrat. And so they're very supportive of LGBT. They're very supportive of the environment issues. They're basically like Democrats in any other state that's in like the South or something like that. And so when I made that post, I got phone calls left and right. Of course, I was very well connected. I still am connected. I'm growing my coalition, by the way, new Republican Party I'm building. And so, but the thing is that I was getting phone calls from everybody after that post. And then after the firestorm of phone calls, then they started coming out with statements, denunciations. It became a firestorm of attack Jaden McCormick because he knows everything. He's basically the dangerous character, and now he's unhinged making these posts against the LGBT. And so,
mhm,
I had all these denunciations, even by the governor of the state of Connecticut attacked me. And the whole entire state Senate, the entire, GOP, which is the grand old party, meaning Republicans, everybody essentially attacked me. Even the person that I was virtually friends with that is currently running for governor as a Republican in the state of Connecticut attacked me and sent his men to go ahead and sign up petitions for my new primary opponent, which they got in 3 days. So, and here's the thing, too, is that in Connecticut, there are 31 uncontested seats for the Republicans versus the Democrats. So the Republicans don't even have people in those seats to challenge in the November election. And so, they're actually pretty, much a sore loser party right now, the Republicans are, because they don't even
mhm,
have people to challenge the Democrats. But apparently they can do it because they went ahead in 3 days, put somebody in my primary with all their coalition and just did it and forced it through. And so
mhm,
they have the means, they have the ways, but they're friends with the Democrats. They are progressive, and they want to basically just have this agenda that's very similar. They're basically all one party right now, but I'm the
mhm,
one that's standing up. I'm the one that's facing the truth and showing morality as Bible. And of course, even though my views are based on the Bible with the LGBT, none of that will occur as far as regulations on them until a Supreme Court ruling, Lawrence v. Texas. And so I'm an advocate right now, very particularly, of even bringing back the death penalty for pedophiles, because if you rape a 3-year-old girl, that is insane. You should get the death penalty. all these pedophiles should not just be in jail. They should die because of the fact that they are wicked, they're disgusting, and they ruin lives. And so, I need to bring back the death penalty in general in the state. But then, of course, later on, once the Supreme Court ruling, because it wasn't even until 1971 when it happened where sodomy became legalized in the state of Connecticut. That's not too far long ago. It's crazy. It was in 2003 when Lawrence v. Texas happened where it became federally legalized. So everything I'm saying is very baseline level, down to earth, and of course, biblically based. And so I know what I'm standing up for. Everybody told me to back down. Everyone said, get out of the race, Jaden, even though you're the GOP endorsed candidate that's on the ticket, my name will be on the top of the ballot. Hey, I'm not backing down. I already got that endorsement by the GOP, and they're going to have to face it because I'm speaking the truth. No matter how wicked they are, I will be fighting for the people. And we're going to go ahead and make this the biggest thing in the state of Connecticut and maybe even nationally, whatever God's will is. But we are fighting for what is proper, what is right, and what is moral. And it's just proper. I just want to make sure that we fight for the truth.
Yes,
That was
yes,
a
I
big
love
one.
it.
So, yeah.
I love it. I can't get enough of this. I mean, as soon as because okay, so let me give a little bit of backstory because you were talking about how well connected you are and with your networking. And so, in case anyone's wondering, I'm not just a clout chaser. Okay, I am a clout chaser, but that's not all that I am. And so, I actually knew you before you went viral. Okay, I think we've known each other
True.
for about 2 years now. You've helped me
Mhm.
out with the channel before, and so yeah, like when I met you in person at least once. And so like when I saw your post and I saw all the comments and stuff, and like just like when like on June 2nd, the day that will live forever in infamy, I was like, oh wow. I was like, this is crazy. And so I was just immediately like, we gotta stand behind him. Like this, he's doing the work of God. Like this is incredible. And it's like you were saying how the Democrats, it's really I think PSA has said this where it's like the Democrats and the Republicrats, because they're the same. And so if nothing else, what you're doing is you're giving the people of Connecticut, it's Area 50 or whatever it's called.
Democracy. Yeah, District 50, and I am giving the people the choice to make the decision if they wanna follow a man of God versus following, society's destruction.
Yes. Yeah, you're actually giving them a choice. If nothing else, because that's what a lot of Christians, me, I feel like, it's always the lesser of two evils discussion that is being had. Well, he's Zionist and he's pro homo, but he's gonna lower taxes and he's gonna, get rid of all the illegals or whatever. It's like, yeah, he's okay, but the other person is worse. But it's like, no, like you are standing in the gap. You are actually crying aloud and sparing not. And you're not the lesser of two evil. You are just an actual good candidate, which is so foreign to these people. That's why the Republicans don't know what to do with you. They thought that you were just going to be
I
another good
know.
old boy and just toe the line and kiss the ring of Netanyahu or whatever and the idol of Baal, with the
And
progressive
I'll
rainbow.
say this, right, and you're completely correct because they basically were positioning me in maybe 10 years being one of the top Republicans in the entire state. This is how it works in politics. You start, with running for state representative, you're getting very well connected. I was that person. I was literally becoming the top Republican in the entire state. And now, because of my only one post, on June 2nd, protecting the children, that's where it leveled to. But of course, what I did is I doubled down. I went on a radio station and I said exactly that the Bible asked for the death penalty for sodomites just because of the simple fact that that's what it says in Leviticus. But of course, that won't happen until a Supreme Court ruling when it brings it back to what the state used to have in Connecticut. So, but I am here. I'm fighting for the truth. I have very good policies actually with the electric bills, eliminating the public benefits charge. I go straight for all the proper things in life. It's all back to the quality of life and the way that we live. And so I understand all these bases. on knowing how to improve everything with affordability, everything in between that. I'm very much a level-headed individual, and I'm diplomatic. I'm politically correct. I'm actually, before any of this is why they liked me, because I was a very diplomatic, respectful individual. And I still am, but they thought I was like the shining guy. Like I was upstanding. I had the Eagle Scout rank. People really love that. And I was basically just the person that they thought would be this huge player eventually and just be able to build up, this traction. And of course, I'm really good with social media. I was doing America's 250th anniversary podcast, which I will still be releasing. All these state senators, all these state representatives, people running for United States Congress, all were featured on my podcast. And I will be releasing that still, but I'm going to put a disclaimer saying all these people denounced me. So it's like, they're going to be mad, but they can't do anything. And plus, here's another thing: I have a lawyer, I have a bodyguard. I literally have building up my team. I now have acquired a photographer, a media person. I have a new treasurer. And so I'm basically, I know how the game is played. I know exactly what I need to do. That's why they're afraid of me. These people know what they're dealing with, and that's why they hate me so much. I'm the most canceled man in Connecticut history, and I will not back down. I'm fighting for it, and I have claimed this as truth, the new Republican Party, because we need a difference, we need a change, and if we are only going to have two parties in the state of Connecticut, we better fix the one that's closest to moral correctness. And so I'm going to be fighting for what is proper and what is right, as I've been saying.
Yeah. And then, oh, another thing that you mentioned that I wanted to just touch on for a moment is that, we got to make sure that we're playing their word games just as well as they do. And so you can't keep calling them progressive because they're trying to regress America all the way back to Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay. So these people are not trying to progress anything except for their, satanic agenda. Um, but yeah, I think that that's really important what you're saying about how like democracy and giving people a choice, and giving people an opinion, because for as much backlash as you've gotten, I'm sure you're probably also surprised at how much support you've gotten, from people who are like, finally, I mean, good night. It's like, just election cycle after election cycle, the same dog and pony show is put in front of us, and you know, we're just supposed to make a decision because, if I don't vote, I feel bad. I'm not doing my civic duty, but none of these people are speaking to me. And so,
I
that's
know.
great. And like you said, and you're such
Yeah, and
a
that's a
diplomatic
good
expert.
point. Right,
Mhm.
and that point that you made about me getting tons of support, that's so true. I feel that I have basically toted the line for the establishment until I got canceled at June 2nd. And since I got canceled, the people that I thought were my enemies in the GOP have become my friends. And I never realized, why they were fighting against the GOP. I thought they were just outsiders, outcasts, people that were kind of, lower IQ or something. But now I'm realizing they are actually the higher IQ individuals that know what's happening, what's going on in the state. And hey, they have been joining forces with me. They know who I am. They're like, Jaden, wow, you just came from the establishment. We're going to go ahead and support you. Let's go ahead and keep fighting. We've already been doing it. Now you have joined forces. It's kind of like a Paul moment. How
Yeah,
Paul, he was against the Christians. He basically was part of the, establishment where he was fighting against them. And then one day, God showed up. God knew, he knew exactly what to do with Paul and, well, Saul, now Paul. And, maybe I should change my name. No, I'm just kidding. But, you know, it's interesting because God had a plan exactly for me to be able to be part of the establishment in Connecticut and then have everyone turn against me. And now I'm part of the new Republican Party that will fight back against these horrible liberal Democrats and Republicans. And no matter the cost, I will never back down, and they're afraid.
amen. Um, and so, I wanted to touch on because as much fun as it is, to talk about the controversy and all that stuff and the anti-LGBT stuff, but people they want to know that they have a well-rounded candidate. So, what are some other things that are on your platform, and what are some other things that you stand for?
Right, absolutely. Here's the thing is that they've actually been targeting across the board in the state of Connecticut all the best policies. Number one, they went ahead and targeted our religious freedom. They went ahead and removed the religious vaccination exemption this year in the state of Connecticut while I was working there. I was working the Energy and Technology Committee, and then they removed the religious vaccination exemption while I was there. It's not effective until October, but they've already signed it into law and it will be affected. And so, I saw that happen. So that's my number one thing, of course, to revoke, to vote for and
Okay.
be vocal about. Number two, number two, but they went ahead and they just eliminated the entire factors of homeschooling and private schooling as being independent and proper to the parent's choice. They now have it where they regulate it so far that they're going to make it like a satellite public school for any homeschoolers or private school students, which I believe is complete nonsense. And I'm fighting for that. Then they went ahead and started targeting gun rights, and this was all on the same day, by the way, the same day. And they started trying to get rid of Glocks for law abiding citizens. That is the common most used gun in the state of Connecticut, and that's a crazy, that's insane. And so they're targeting all that, and of course I go for affordability, eliminating the public benefits charge on our energy bills, and I want to protect also the students, the homeschoolers, the people that are trying to target our children. See, this is what the Democrats do, and also some of the Republicans. They target the children, they target the mothers, they target the women. They go after the ones that can't really be these huge advocates because they look at them as the second class. Of course, we have an order in the Bible as man of the home, and basically being the ruler and the one that's the authority in the home. But the thing is that they look at women and children as something totally different where they think they can take advantage of them, and the husband of the home is not going to be, the authority figure, but it's the government instead. And so they have something that is totally against the Bible that's happening here. And they feel like they are just expanding government overreach, and that's the best way to go. I disagree with that. I think that's insane. And that's why the new Republican Party that I am a part of now is going to fight against all that and be the ones that are the stronghold, steadfast, the ones that face the enemy and say, I'm not backing down. I'm fighting for what's right. And no matter the cost, even if they cancel me, the most canceled man in Connecticut, I will not sway. I will not back down. I'm fighting for what's true. I was on national news. Remember, I was front page of the Hartford Courant, which is the number one newspaper in all the land. And of course, I was on CNBC, NBC, actually, Connecticut, but it's associated with them. And then I was on News 8, which is the biggest local news in the state of Connecticut. I'm everywhere. I'm literally the most talked about person, denounced by the governor, as I said. And this is crazy, but this is what they're doing. They want to cancel me because they know who I am.
Yeah, yeah, you're a threat because, like you were saying, you know how the game is played. And what I was going to say before is that how you were saying, like, well, I'm politically correct and I'm very diplomatic, and it's like you're so diplomatic, in fact, that you're just starting out your political career and you're coming out with this. You could have waited until you were like the vice governor or whatever, and then you could have come out with this, when you were like really big and more influential. And so it's like you're just forthcoming with your beliefs. You're not trying to hide anything. You're not trying to be deceptive or anything. And so you want to be transparent about who you are to your constituents, which is very upstanding and very uncommon in politics. And so, yeah, I'm sure that's something else that a lot of people
Yeah,
appreciated.
and that's another thing. Right, and that's so true is that a lot of these politicians, they hide who they are. They basically make everything, about hey, let's just be a regular Republican. Let's just be who, the party says we should be. That's how they train me. I actually was taking these politically correct classes that actually the current person running for governor took. And I was a part of this really small niche group. The current person running for U.S. Congress in District 2, George Austin, was a part of this, class. And I was okay. It runs deep. It runs deep. I was part of the most, I guess, exclusive class of the Connecticut Republicans there is. And, I have stories for days. I can tell you beyond belief what's going on in this state because I
Hey.
was there. I was in the room. I was in the shady corner, not doing anything shady myself, but I heard it all. And that's why they hate me so much because they know I was there.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of the passage in the Bible where God takes Elijah by the head and like shows him all the different like evil things that are going on in secret, and and like you said, like the dark shady rooms, the dark smoky rooms, and it's like Elijah, you know that things are bad. Well, let me just tell you, they're actually worse. And so it's like we can see that things are bad, but you saw the mask off and you got to see, the underbelly of the beast. And you're like, no, actually, it's so much worse. Like I heard the interview that you did on X the other day, and how you were saying that like I'm naming the names and I'm telling you about these people, and you think that they're Republican, but they're not. And I was just like, oh man, like expose these people, please. Um, yeah, because I mean they're pretenders, and they think that
True.
votes are taken. They take the votes for granted. I especially felt that way in the last in the last presidential election, because it's like Trump is very not pro life, but he feels entitled to the pro life vote because, of course, the Democrats hate people, but they especially hate the unborn. And so it's like, I don't want to vote for this. I don't like this feeling of like I have to vote for him because if I don't, then I'm like a traitor or whatever. Because he's not pro
Right, and I'll
life.
I'll say this, right, is that Melania, Trump's wife, basically is very pro-abortion, and people don't realize that, is that she's very pro-abortion, and it tells a lot when your other half, because in the Bible it says you're one flesh, but when your other half literally is completely progressive and has all this ideology, it tells a lot about the man.
Yes, it does. Because your wife is supposed to be a reflection of you, and so what does that really say about Trump? But I digress. And so I should probably look this up before, but is Connecticut blue or red at like the governor?
It's a completely blue state. It's a super majority of Democrats.
Okay, okay. Um, Okay. And so, yeah, here, well, I'm not in Virginia right now, but where I live in Virginia, we're a liberal cesspool as well. And we recently just elected our very first woman governor. And going back to the common theme of the lesser of two evils, we only had two women candidates this time around. It was Winsome Sears and then Abigail Spanberger. And so it's like Winsome Sears is a Republican, and so she's supposed to be standing up for biblical values and traditional truths and all this stuff. And it's like there's nothing biblical or traditional about a woman governor. Give me a break. But it's like the opposite is like darn near a communist. And so it's just like, man, we need we need more people like you. We need more people standing in the gap, rising up. And so the next thing I want to talk about is, because you're a Christian first. Okay. So whatever your political career does, at the end of the day, you're a man of God. And so, what is your stance on Christians in politics? Do you feel like there needs to be an uprising of, biblical, God-fearing men, in politics? Do you believe that Christians should vote? I know a lot of people think that, oh, voting doesn't matter. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. It's all the world is a stage kind of thing. But what is your stance on that?
Right. And here's the thing as far as, us being in the motion of influence. First off, the main thing that will ever make a difference is us winning souls to Jesus Christ. Us being a soul winner, giving the gospel to an individual and then having their soul be going to heaven for eternity. And so that's what really matters. I think anybody that runs for politics should be a soul winner that knows how to give the gospel. That's my opinion. I think that's truly what a leader should be, is knowing how to give the gospel to somebody. And then everything after that, they can go ahead and be involved. They can be influential. They can know about policy. And so a soul winner first, that's what's important because you truly understand the eternity dynamics behind life. Because the whole purpose of life is not about ruling government, even though it's important, and it's not about trying to be best friends with everybody. It's all about going to heaven because once you have your faith on Jesus Christ, you're guaranteed heaven 100%. And once that happens, then you can be able to do, your hobbies and be able to enjoy life and of course still win souls to Jesus Christ, and so but that's first. Then, once you're a soul winner, you can be able to run for government as a man and be able to be influential. You can be somebody that can really bring change to the world, of course, on a state level. But it's important that we as Christians stand up and fight. We have to, especially in society. It's going to keep getting worse and worse. They're going to start regulating the Bible, they're going to start regulating soul winning efforts. They're going to be completely against us. Of course, in the United States of America, we have the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, things that can protect us legally. But it's just going to keep getting worse. We already see them changing the Constitution. And that's why we have to stand up. That's why we have to fight. We have to have longevity as a Christian. And here's the thing also, when you're running in politics like myself, when they cancel you and when you're this big name and all that, they don't really care as much anymore of what you say because they expect Jaden E. McCormick to be able to say something outlandish, something very biblical now. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's just Jaden saying it. And I'm like, all right, well, now I have my freedom of speech back. So happy me, So you can actually be able to push the bear and poke the bear a little bit, and you'll be able to have more freedom. I didn't even expect this, honestly. On June 2nd, I thought that was just going to be, of course, a little bit controversial, kind of like somebody saying, I'll get some hate comments from people be like, can't believe you're against the gays. I can't believe you're against, protecting children. Like, how is that even a thing, right? But people are like that. And so I was expecting that to happen, but I didn't expect it to go viral, get denounced by the whole entire state of Connecticut. And then, then I had to double down and say what the Bible said. And then it got even worse. I can tell you stories for days. This will have to be a whole other podcast series. But, for this one, it was just insane. And of course, Christians that are soul winners Christian men should run for politics. I absolutely agree with that. As far as voting, I'm still going to be voting in this election cycle because, I feel that's my civic duty. I, of course, understand when people say, why would you even vote in the first place when it's just basically we have to take a stand and go against the political regime? I actually see that as a fair argument, but it's not something that I personally agree with as far as my civic duties. But, I very much see it as fair.
Okay. And that's really good to know. And that is such a good point that you made about it's like, you can have your hobbies, you can have things that you're passionate about, all of that is great, but don't miss the main thing. It's all about soul winning. Governments come and go, even the Roman Empire, even, Genghis Khan's empire, it all came to an end. And we gotta keep souls the main focus. So I just absolutely love that. Um, and so I wanted to touch on one more topic before we begin closing. I almost forgot to touch on what you said because your whole thing it's not about necessarily just like being anti-homo. It's about protecting children. And you also made a statement online about how you wanted to ban pornography. And so, do you want to touch
Mm.
on that a little bit? Because I thought that was excellent as well.
Yeah, actually that post got a lot of traction and I haven't even gotten a question about it. So that's good that you brought that up. So my entire philosophy basically of course with pornography is that people watch that and eventually turn into a reprobate and turn gay. And so, that's fighting at the root of the problem right there. And of course, the people that create that disgusting, despicable content, I believe they also are targeting children because I have witnesses that have told me after I made that post, they're 11 years old, they're 10 years old, they're 12 years old. They started watching pornography and got addicted to it. And they basically have been, and here's also the thing as a Boy Scout, as a Boy Scout, I was surrounded by all these kids when I was growing up. They always talked about pornography. I thought that was completely disgusting, vile, and filth of how they even brought up that topic. But that's young boys that are like 11, 12, 13, 14, maybe teenage years as well. But it all starts very early. And so we need regulation because this is what's happening. It's very vocalized. It's a part of the culture for people that are that young to be starting to watch that stuff. And plus, not only do we need regulation on the websites, but we need regulation on the individuals that create such disgusting, vile, inappropriate stuff and post it online. And most of these people are targeted by these people of large corporations, and they're only 18 years old, freshly 18 virgins that go ahead. Sometimes they're not virgins, but most of the time they actually are when they're 18 still, because in Gen Z are actually the most virgin class of people in history since, like, the hippie days. And basically, they're targeting them and they're creating all this content. They're ruining their life forever. But we need a way to take a stand and say, hey, if you do this content, you're going to get 20 years in jail straight out. And that's what will be the deterrent. And I am fighting for that. I believe that should be righteously put in place. And I believe the 20-year sentence for something so degenerate is very fair because it tells them, hey, this is morally incorrect. This is actually illegal to a degree. And you need to go ahead and have repercussions for such a filthy act as creating content for the general population.
Absolutely. I really couldn't agree more. I actually like that stance more than the other one. And I'm all for, banning homosexuality, don't get me wrong, but like because I know in my own life, like I've never had a bad encounter with a homo personally, but I have had a bad encounter with pornography because the first time I ever saw it was on TV. Okay. So like growing up, we had Cox and like my dad, he paid for the movie channels. And so like during the day, like even on the kids channels, it would be like Madagascar, it'd be the Diary of a Wimpy Kid, it would have been like whatever popular kid movie was out at the time. And I remember stumbling upon those channels and I was like, oh wow, this is awesome. And then at night, it turns into smut. And I went back to that channel and I was defiled. And so it's just like, oh my gosh. And it's just like, it's predatory, is what it is. I mean, to have it even be allowed that you can show children's movies in the day and then adult content at night is wicked. And it's like, who is allowing this? And so, the knuckle dragging oxygen thieves tried to say, like, oh, check his hard drive. Oh, why is he posting this in the middle of the night? And it's like, that speaks more about you than it does about him. Because why would anyone who is sane and healthy have anything negative to say about something that's
Yeah,
advocating
that's
for the
that's
protection of children?
definitely true. Like, I've had all these attacks saying, this person's on Grinder, which I think is like a gay dating site. And and then also I post these controversial things at night because that's when I'm available to post. I'm a very busy person. I have tons of meetings. I'm basically like all over the place every single day having these, exclusive meetings that people don't know about. And then at nighttime at like midnight, I get back home or whatever, or maybe I'm still on the road or something, and I have to pull off the site at midnight. Even at night, I'm busy. So, I'm a very hard worker. I've always been like that. And so at like 12 midnight, I'm making posts. Sometimes it's at 3 a.m., but I'm always consistently doing things. And when do I sleep? Whenever I basically crash out, hopefully my health doesn't suffer, but I feel completely healthy, but anyways, and I've been getting all these attacks, the people calling me gay, because here's the funny thing is that gay people use the insult of calling you gay and they basically think that that will affect you as like something derogatory. And I laugh at that. I'm like, how stupid are these people that they're using their own sexuality as being an insult? And I read a comment this morning, and somebody was saying, "How can you use that as an insult? How does that make sense?" And the person replied back and saying, "Well, it's an insult because you get a reaction from them, and that's when it's funny." And I'm thinking in my head, the only reaction I get is a laugh on my own personally without replying to them, and I'm just laughing all day long. And so I've been having the joy of my life reading these comments. I've been getting the phone calls from every gay person on my phone. It's been blowing up, and they're making like these crazy remarks, and I'm just laughing to myself, having a great time. I should have like a comedy show and just have my phone going off the hook. And I think everybody would tune in across the whole world and be like, wow, this is hilarious. But, anyways, that's a good point as far as going back to how these people, even when I promote morality, they go ahead and comment under something of my banning pornography, and they say, this person probably is blah blah blah, and then they reflect on themselves and they actually promote it, and they say there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't matter. Maybe the parents should just get involved with the children and say, hey, you shouldn't watch it or whatever. But let's be honest here. This is not what's happening in this world. Everywhere I go, every child, basically every single person I meet that's ever tells me the truth, they started watching pornography at that young age, and it hasn't stopped for them because they're not biblically based and they need that help and guidance. And we need to, of course, get them saved through soul winning, and then, of course, teach them the righteous ways of life. And that all starts with just being in a good local Baptist, fundamental Baptist church. And so, that needs to happen. But of course, government needs to get involved where that can't even be the beginning of it. They'll have to have like this over, because here's the thing. If anybody remembers this, I don't know if it's still the same today. Back when I was growing up, we had these iPod touches, and you had to, if you wanted like the brand new game or whatever like that, you would have to have your parent put in the credit card or the password. And basically, you didn't have unfavoring access to anything on your iPod. Nowadays, everybody that's young gets an iPhone, and everything's accessible to them. The parents don't care, everything in between, it's been completely, justified for the child to do whatever they want. They say, oh, that's their own choices. What, when they're 9 years old, when they're 11 years old? What, you want them to have complete access to the filth and degeneracy out there? And then you start thinking, well, they're always saying, I want them to be learned in this political ideology. But then you, of course, have children that are going the total opposite direction. And they're like, how could they turn out like that? It's because they have internet access, dummy. It's like, come on, we have to go back to what's real here. It's very common sense. And the Democrats hate that word whenever we say common sense, because they aren't common sense and they feel like us saying that is attacking them because of their ideology is completely removed from society. And so, but everything I'm saying here used to be law in the land. It used to be something that we structured as proper and moral. But now, of course, we became so progressive. I know you don't like that word, but that's the word they use. And it's been so demoralized that everybody looks at me, Jaden E. McCormick, and the most canceled man in Connecticut, and says, this guy's insane. His rhetoric is absolutely outcast and shouldn't be part of our society. But then they look at the founding fathers, they look at the founding people of the state of Connecticut, and they say, wow, Jaden's basically one of them. And they're like, the founding fathers is what Jaden McCormick is. Like his ideology is the same as them. Yes. And so if they don't love America, they can go ahead and be their own class of citizens. They don't have to be American. They can move out to, Timbuktu And but I'm going to be true to who I am, true to our founding fathers, true to the Constitution of the state of Connecticut, and I'm fighting for what is proper, morally straight. And no matter the cost, even if they cancel me, I will still be the fighter that the people want, and the people need the choice and decision to be had.
Absolutely. And so, thank you, Jaden, so much for your time and for sharing this, letting me pick your brain. I love to hear that you're burning the midnight oil. That's something good for a young man to be doing. Establishing yourself and putting yourself out there, and not being afraid of their faces because God is with you, and crying aloud and sparing not, and just all these things.
And
And
please
one thing I wanted to
pray.
mention is
Yes.
that
Yeah, I just want to say, please pray for me. Everybody that's a Christian that has faith on Jesus Christ and truly knows 100% you're going to heaven, your prayer has a lot of power. Your prayer is influential to God and to myself, and basically how the life we're all living. So please pray for me. That's my biggest request. It's not for money, it's not for fame, it's not for glory, because all glory goes to God, but it's for prayer. Please pray for me. I'm fighting for what's proper. I need that prayer right now. And, I definitely just need prayer in general.
Amen. And I was going to mention that. And so, in closing, when is election day? Let me get that out there first.
Right. So of course they went. I originally, here's the thing. Until, June 2nd, I was the only person running for state representative as a Republican. I was the GOP. I still am the GOP endorsed candidate. And, I was basically going to be on the November 3rd ballot. And
Okay.
now, since they went ahead in 3 days, put somebody in my primary, I now have an election August 11th. And August 11th is going to be very interesting because I have a lot planned before that, and people are not expecting what I'm about to do. It's going to be huge. It's going to be grand. There's going to be a lot of coverage, but this is what is happening. August 11th is when I'm going to be, on a ballot in District 50, and we'll see the results. Am I going to think I'm going to be victorious and overpass every single person? Probably not, because as somebody in the state of Connecticut, it's a very hard line when you're fighting against the entire Republican Party. But I might win. I might. And if I do, I'm
Yeah.
still not stopping. And if I don't win, I'm still not stopping. I'm always going to be the fighter, no matter if I win or lose an election, because I know what's morally correct. And I'm always going to be in politics. I'm going to be the most pain in their side that they've ever had. And they don't know what's happening right now with me because I'm building my coalition. I've already built every part of my structure to be successful, and I'm also a very expert networker. They already understand who I am, but they don't expect me to be this grand force yet. But they need to understand that I am here to stay. I will not back down. I will not be the person that says, "Oh no, I got canceled. Now to think about going back into entrepreneurship and real estate," which I actually still am a part of. But the thing is that, I'm not going to retreat, and that is what a true patriot does. A true patriot looks in the face of evil and says, "God is on my side. God is fighting for me, and I know I'm doing what the Bible says, and no matter what happens, even if they spit in my face, I will persecute, anybody that goes against the Bible." And that's truly what a man of God does, and that's who I am. And no matter the choice that I am going to be facing against an election and saying if I win or lose, I will always be there for the people.
All right. I love it. It sounds like a battle cry. It sounds like you're charging into war right now. And really you are. You're in spiritual battle right now. And so these people, they don't know who they're dealing with. They're reaping the whirlwind by messing with you. Okay. Who is on the Lord's side? And I would definitely say that, Jada McCormick is. And
Well,
so,
it's interesting that you call it like a battle cry in war, because this actually is part of society's war right now, and this is actually politics. Politics is what war is made out of. We had the Civil War. We had, basically the Revolutionary War. We have all these things. This is what politics does. And yes, not only is this a spiritual war, but this is a war within the Republican Party for fighting for righteousness and societal destruction versus societal, upholdment. And so I want to make this a battle cry for every person, not only in the state of Connecticut, but around the United States, that we have a choice to make. Will we go ahead and decide to fight for the greater of the two evils or the lesser of two evils or whatever? Or will we actually stand up? Will we actually be the person that says, I'm fighting for what's right and I don't care if they cancel me? But that's what I look at it as. Connecticut, though it's very deep liberal and though it's very deep progressive with the Republican Party, doesn't matter to me because I have the support, I have the means, I have the ways, and I will be there for the people.
All right, Jaden. And so, how can people get a hold of you? How can people donate to your campaign? And what can we do besides pray? Like you said, that's obviously the most important thing. But what can your brothers and sisters in Christ do and your constituents do to help move the McCormack train along?
Right. Now, here's the thing is that I am currently working on getting my campaign donation forms all restarted, and that will only happen next week. So you can't really technically donate to my campaign because they canceled me so badly, and the SEEC canceled my, campaign. Well, they haven't canceled my campaign, but they canceled a way to fund me. But I'm
Mm.
restructuring it. Next week is when that will occur, but I am officially on Cameo. So you can go ahead and personally fund my expenses, my living expenses, my livelihood, because I'm working full time in politics right now. I'm a soul winner as well. I basically am working 24/7. So I can't technically, have a full time job. And plus, even if I applied to a full time job, they'd be like, whoa, And so I'm on Cameo, and if you want to go ahead and just on Cameo buy, a short video from me, $35, and that way you can ask a question to me, I'll reply back, and that will fund me as far as my livelihood. But then keep a lookout on my social media. Follow me on all social media, Jaden McCormack, Jaden E. McCormack, and you'll be able to see my announcements, everything coming up, and then you'll be able to donate eventually when I'm able to announce that properly again.
Okay. And so I'll be sure to put that in the description of the video. And so, everybody, keep it locked on him. You don't want to miss a thing because you never know what the next thing he's going to say is. Okay. And so, any final thoughts, Brother Jaden?
Well, I'm glad that we're fighting for righteousness. That's my goal. We have to fight with what the Bible says and truly what souls depend on.
All right. And so, yes, I'll be definitely praying for you. I'll be asking, pleading with the Jeanettes to pray for you. And I can't wait to see what's going to happen come August. Like you said, there's a lot of good stuff coming down the pike in August. And so, yeah, we'll be watching, we'll be supporting, we'll be praying, and Godspeed, brother.
Thank you. God bless.
So, all right, friends, we hope that you really enjoyed that. I know that was a blessing for me. And so don't get black pilled, friends. There's still hope. If it was hopeless, then the propaganda would be unnecessary. And so we can still do things. It's not over yet. And the fight is still on. And so if you like this, then please be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, share the video, especially if you're in Connecticut, share the video. And like I said, we'll be monitoring his campaign and we'll be praying for our brother in Christ. And I hope that you guys have an excellent day. And I'll talk to you again real soon.